Alright, this is challenge 2. For those of you that can see, I've laid out a top plate and a bottom plate. I have about just shy of an inch gap between the two. And I'm going to kind of focus on this part of my top plate and my bottom plate. And so just like before, I'm going to start off with marking my beginning point over here. And then at the other end, I'm going to mark my 8 feet. So again, I'm just marking my starting point on both my top and bottom. At the other end, I'm marking my 8-foot point. And what I'm going to do next is I want to come back through and mark just my 16 inches on center. I don't want to make full lines. I just want to make the marks so I have a reference point of where they're at. So again, I have 16, I have 32, I have 48, I have 80, and again 96. So, in challenge 2, it tells me that I have a 32-inch door. That's how big the opening is. That starts over here at 16 inches. Alright. When we look at it, my door opening is actually going to go from 48, which is right here, to 30, from 16 to 48. So if it starts at 16, 16 plus the 32-inch door opening gets me a total of 48. So, after I've marked all my 16 inches on center, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the door opening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. And once I've marked that opening, what I like to do is put a little arrow referencing which way my door is going. I'm going to come over here to 48. And I'm going to do the same thing. So I know that in this space, I have my door, which is a 32-inch, what we call rough opening. Okay. Now, a lot of the questions came up that said, well, what do I do with the studs that should have been there, and what am I doing on the top plate? Well, we'll get to the top plate in a minute. We're going to kind of focus on the bottom plate for right now. Okay? The key thing here that we have to understand is that when you look at the picture that I put in classroom under today's activities, the door opening on either side, you have a trimmer and you have a king stud. So if we look a little closer, to right here at 48, alright, at 48, I know that I'm going to have my trimmer, which my trimmer is 1.5 inches wide, so I can draw that in. So essentially, from 48 to 49.5, so my line was a little off, that's okay. And then from 49.5 to 51 is going to be my king stud. So you can see that I labeled that with a T and with a K. I'm going to do the same thing over here at 16 inches. But instead of going towards the end of the wall, I'm going to go to the start. So I'm going to line it up. I'm going to mark out for my trimmer, slide it down, and mark out my king stud. So again, trimmer, king stud. Now, when we think about it, and you wonder, all right, well, what gets transferred up to my top plate? In this circumstance, my header doesn't go all the way to my top plate. So I actually have upper cripples above where my trimmer is. So if I transfer these lines directly over, my king stud is a full stud, so that does get transferred over. So this is an upper cripple, and that's my king stud. On the other side, coming back here, normally here at 32 inches, we would have a stud. Well, in the door, we can't have a stud, but on the top plate at 32 inches, we still need that cripple for support. So we go from 31 1/4 to 32 3/4, and we mark our stud. And that's actually not a stud. I correct myself, that is an upper cripple. And then we come back to the other side of the door. And we do the same thing we did before. We're going to transfer our trimmer lines up to be our upper cripple. And then the same thing with our king stud. So we then have our upper cripple and our king stud. Outside of that, the other lines that we draw at 64 and at 80 are still studs, so those get treated the same way any stud would get treated. So I made my marks here at 79 1/4 and 80 3/4. Just like that. And then remember, at the end, we always start and end our wall with a stud. And that's pretty much it. So as you look down, that's pretty much our wall.